you tell us your name, please, sir?
Russ Gibbs.
And where do you live, Mr. Gibbs?
Detroit, Michigan.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a disc jockey on an underground radio station called WKNR-FM.
Calling your attention to the 12th day of October of this year, 1969, Mr. Gibbs, in the afternoon, were you on duty and on the air?
Yes, sir.
And did you receive a phone call from a listener about Paul McCartney, the Beatles singer?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah, hello, Tom. What's going down? I was going to rant with you about McCartney being dead. What is this all about?
Well, the youngster said, would you play one cut for me on the air forward? And he said, take the album, and what we call the White Album, play a cut called Revolution Number 9, and play it forward. And as you do so, the guy comes on and says, number 9, number 9, number 9. He repeats it. And at that point, the kid said, now, play that backwards. And I played it backwards, and man, I freaked. I went crazy because of the fact it says, turn me on, dead man. I just flipped out.
Is that the album?
Yes, sir.
I want you to listen now and tell us whether or not this is what you heard when you reversed the recording.
Number 9, Nanny Anderman, Nanny Anderman, Nanny Anderman, Nanny Anderman, Nanny Anderman.
What other examples, if any, did you find of curious doings on these albums and recordings?
Well, at that point, the switchboard at the station started to light up like crazy, and kids started to call in, but I still had this fellow on the air, and he said, will you play one other thing? And he said, play this one forward. And he said, get the Magical Mystery Tour album.
Is this that album?
Yes, sir. This is
what,
one.
With reference to that album, did you do?
Well, I got out Strawberry Fields, which is a cut on here. And right at the very end, he said, play it. And he said, see if you can hear something in there. And so I play the album forward, and you hear very distinctly at the end, someone saying, I buried Paul.
Is that forwards or in reverse?
That's forward, sir.
All right, will you listen now and tell us if this is what you heard at the end of Strawberry Fields? Have you found any other examples beyond the ones you've described?
Oh, yes, sir. Again, in the White Album, you get into a very strange thing. It's in between So Tired and Blackbird. There's a mumble. But then if you play that backwards, it says, Paul is dead man. Miss him. And it's very clear that way.
May we hear it now, then, and see whether or not you recognize it as what you heard when you uncovered it.
Yes, sir.
Can we have your name, sir?
My name is Doc Siegel.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a recording engineer for Gold Star Studios in Hollywood.
Mr. Siegel, have you heard the recordings that we just played through the other witness?
Oh, yes.
And have you sufficient technical experience to give us any opinion as to the likelihood that these could have been accidentally implanted?
It's my considered opinion that they could not have been accidental.
Can you tell us a little bit about how these recordings were made and what would be necessary to produce this effect?
It was played backwards, so the tape was cut out, turned backwards, put back in. That piece definitely had some editing done.
Mr. Siegel, based on your experience, do you think it likely or even possible that these could be just sounds which through coincidence seem to reflect a tragic event or a death?
But it is possible for perhaps one or two to be accidental. But in the majority, no. I think that they actually were planted.
Tape and electronics have brought an enormous new feel to music. It's surprising what you can do once you have a sound recorded on tape. There's a whole range of things you can do, which it will be obviously far too complicated to describe to you in detail. But take the sound of an ordinary cymbal, for example. Have a listen to this. Now, have you heard it backwards?
May we have your name, sir?
My name is Fred LeBour.
And where do you live?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
What is your occupation, please?
I'm a student there at the university.
Are you the same Fred LeBour who published on October 14th, 1969, an article in the Michigan Daily, a newspaper published by the university, which begins as follows? Paul McCartney was killed in an automobile accident in early November 1966 after leaving EMI recording studios tired, sad, and dejected.
Well, I was supposed to... They asked me to review Abbey Road, which was the current Beatle album. So, and also there were a lot of rumors going around that Paul was dead, so, you know, I just started putting all those clues together.
I hand you a copy of the album published by the Beatles called Abbey Road and ask you to explain what it was there that made you suspect that Paul was in fact dead.
Well, there's John. The four Beatles are crossing a street called Abbey Road, and they are leaving what appears to be a cemetery on the left-hand side of the album cover. The first Beatle, John Lennon, is dressed in white and with long hair, looks either like a doctor or a minister or even a Christ-like figure, a God-like figure. The next man walking across the street is Ringo, who's dressed as an undertaker. The next man is Paul, who's wearing an outdated suit. He's barefoot, which is would suggest a corpse. Suggest his symbolizing.
It is the fact that people are buried in England without their shoes.
That's true. That's so I understand.
And
yes.
the fourth figure.
And George Harrison is wearing denim clothes, like he's a grave digger.
What significance, if any, do you attach to the parked Volkswagen with a registration plate on the back?
Well, the license plate says 28 if, and if Paul McCartney were alive today, he would be in his 28th year of existence.
In other words, he would be 27, looking toward his 28th
That's
birthday.
correct. That's correct.
Ask you to reverse the album and tell me whether or not you find anything on the rear of the album that to you is suspicious or appears to be deliberate.
Well, there are 3 dots in the wall up near the top that appear, if a line was drawn between them, it appears to make the number 3, so it would read 3 Beatles.
Would you connect them up as you suggest?
3 Beatles.
And you say that that was intended to be a message that there are now alive only 3 Beatles? But it's evidence that you find persuasive.
Yeah, it's a coincidence in a series of hundreds of coincidences in the albums.
And you another album that has been published by the Beatles, I think less than a year ago, called Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, there are a lot of clues. On the cover, the 4 Beatles are dressed up in animal costumes with masks on. And it said that the front Beatle is Paul, dressed as a walrus in black, in a crucifixion pose. In the inserts inside the album here, in the picture book sort of thing, it says, "I am the walrus." "No, you're not," said little Nicola. And then when the Beatles album came out, the White Album, a year ago, there's a song in it called Glass Onion, in which John says, "And here's another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul."
And you think that is John Lennon disclosing the fact that Paul is in fact dead and that's why he's the walrus?
Well, it's John Lennon just saying the walrus is Paul. I don't know, exactly what he was trying to do.
Is there anything else in specific lyrics that you think forms a part of this entire pattern?
Yeah, and Sgt. Pepper, he blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed.
And the suspicion is that he was in fact killed in an automobile accident,
Yes.
is that right?
Yeah.
You're examining now the rear of the album, Sgt. Pepper's.
That's right. There are 4 Beatles on the back, and one's back is facing us. The others are facing us face on. One's back is turned. That's Paul.
All right. And on the front of the album, do you find anything significant as to the configuration in which Paul McCartney is?
Well, the whole album is really reeks with death symbols. I mean, there's a grave on the front, which they have acknowledged to be some sort of a grave. Down in the lower right-hand corner is a group of flowers in the shape of a bass guitar, left-handed bass guitar, which if looked at in a certain way, also spell out Paul, ?
Why is left-handed significant as to the
Paul's
bass guitar?
left-handed.
Is he the only left-handed Beatle?
Yeah, that's right.
What about this apparent hand that is hanging over his
Yeah,
head?
that's a symbol that seems to recur a lot. It supposedly indicates the presence of evil, singling one person out for the presence of evil.
I noticed that in the photographs on the inside of this album, all of the Beatles appear in some sort of costume, but a sleeve patch on the left arm of Paul McCartney, whom you say is left-handed, has the initials OPD on it. Have you found any significance to those initials?
Yeah, in England that's supposed to mean it's the equivalent of our DOA, dead on arrival, and it means officially pronounced dead.
Now, you've made reference to other pictures of the Beatles where only Paul McCartney is without shoes, which you interpret to some extent as a suggestion of death. Where have you found those?
Well, on the cover of Abbey Road, most obviously, but in the pictures that came with the Magical Mystery Tour album, one where they're all standing and they have their hands up, and there's a hand behind Paul's head, of course, next to a white piano. He's barefoot on page 10. And on page 13, he's standing barefoot with his shoes over next to the drums.
Is there anything unusual about the shoes that you can see?
It appears as though they're red stained.
Could you examine this photograph of the 4 Beatles dressed in white, each with a flower, and tell me if there's anything unusual that you found about it?
Yeah, Paul is wearing a black rose and the other Beatles are wearing red roses.
And what significance do you attach to that?
The black rose obviously symbolizes death.